Hey, what's going on guys, Xuen here. So today we're going to be taking a look behind the scenes of the making of Xuen 3, and I'm going to be teaching you guys the techniques that I use to make this movie, as well as some tips and tricks that you can take from this video to create your own projects. So hope this helps, and let's get started. So looking at After Effects, this is the actual Xuen 3 project. As you can see, this is the first scene, which is the machinima scene that I edited. And in this video, we're going to be pretty much going over some color correction techniques, as well as some camera techniques to kind of give you guys a very nice looking machinima scene where the colors pop out and people are really interested in, the way that the scene looks. So I will say first that I do want you, there's two things that I want you guys to take from this video. One is, I want you guys to take, the techniques that I'm teaching in this video and not copy. Instead, take the techniques and create your own projects using these techniques. I don't want you to copy me step by step. You can do that for practice, but if you're creating something, on your own and you're creating, a project, put some love into it, put some effort into it. Don't copy someone, step by step, because you want to really try to find your own style of editing, and I'd really love to see it. And this is one of the reasons why I'm doing these tutorials, is because I want to see what you guys can come up with. I'm really excited to see your guys' style of editing, what you guys can do. So let's get started. Now, the second thing that you guys will notice, we're jumping right into this, is the camera tracking tool that I use. Now, this is an amazing machinima tool built for WoW. It's been out for quite a while, that a lot of machinima artists have been using. Now, what this does is it allows you to actually go in-game, detach the actual camera from your character, and like fly around with your camera. Now, you can add keyframes, and once you add a certain amount of keyframes, you hit the play, and then it zooms to those keyframes, or flies the camera to those keyframes to get a really, really smooth looking shot that you can achieve by yourself. You can't achieve, a turning camera motion like this in this scene by yourself with your hand. I highly doubt, even if you had the smoothest, grip on your mouse, I highly doubt that you can get a very smooth shot like this. And that's one of the reasons why I like this machinima tool. Now, if you guys want to know what this machinima tool is, and you guys plan on using this strictly for, machinima purposes and what is intended for, I don't mind letting you guys know. So message me in a YouTube private message, or a stream private message, or on Facebook or Twitter, somewhere that you can reach me, and I will tell you guys in a private message. Other than that, I don't like, discussing what this tool is, even though you could probably Google it. Even if you guys Google it, I'd ask if you guys could just be respectful with this plugin, because Blizzard hasn't had a problem with this plugin up until now, and they still don't have a problem with it. However, if people started to use this to spy on people in RPGs, or, to use it for unintended purposes, they would start to, get players banned, or they would not allow players to use this. And this would force a lot of machinima artists to go back to the old style and not get those really cool cinematic shots. So I'd ask you guys to be respectful if you were to use this plugin or program. And other than that, let's get started. So sorry about that. Just want to make sure you guys be respectful when you use this type of program. So getting into color correction, I'm going to unselect these two color correction layers that I have, and you guys can tell the difference that these color correction layers bring. So this is the actual raw footage from WoW. I'm actually going to unselect the actual text really quick. So this is the raw footage from WoW. As you can see, it's very plain. It's not, again, it's very plain, but what you can do, which a lot of people don't realize, is you can add color correction to really make these scenes pop out. And again, it doesn't take long, but a lot of people don't really like going that extra mile. And trust me, when it comes to editing big projects, if you go that extra mile, it definitely pays off. So if you guys don't want to use these third-party plugins because they are very expensive, you can use some built-in tools with After Effects. So we're going to take a look at that first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to this. I'm going to select New, going to Adjustment Layer. And I'm going to add some curves and brightness and contrast. So I'm going to go over to my effects and presets, and I'm going to type in curves. This is a built-in plugin to After Effects. I use it in a lot of my projects, not just for movies, but in regular PvP as well, because it really highlights a lot of colors. So I'm going to take this tool, I'm going to drag up the brightness up a little bit, and then I'm going to drag the darkness down a little bit. Now, if you're doing anything other than, you know, a cinematic shot, you don't need to be this dramatic with the curves. You'd probably do something like this, where it was really, really subtle, because this is a very powerful plugin by itself, and you don't want to be too harsh on the actual clips. So, but in actual, you know, scenes, it's okay to go a little bit crazy, because there's no real, I guess, focus point, other than you just want people to take in the surroundings, if that makes any sense. But if you're doing actual gameplay, you don't want it to be too drastic. So just be very light on that if you're using it in actual gameplay. The other thing we can take a look at is brightness and contrast. We're going to drag that in. We're going to drag that probably about up to 10. 10 on each. See how that looks. So again, very subtle. I don't know if you guys can see that if I'm unselecting and selecting it, to where this area right here with the where the sun is hitting the building, the water as well, and a little bit up here, it's just being brought out just a little bit more with the brightness and contrast. So that right there is just curves and brightness and contrast, and you can tell the difference, how much of a difference it makes just using those two plugins. Now, what I like to do is I recently found and been picking up a program called Mojo. Now, this is made by a company called Red Giant. They've made a lot of amazing plugins for After Effects. Again, these plugins are expensive. There are other ways to get these plugins if you really want to. Cough, cough, yar, yar. But I would suggest, if you can, supporting the people that create these plugins, because it's not easy. So if you have the money, I'd suggest doing it, because they really could use the support. So the plugin that I want to talk about is Mojo. Now there's another plugin that I use that is also made by Red Giant, which is called Magic Bullet Looks. But I'm not too familiar on this plugin, so I can't really talk about it too much. But if you guys are really curious what this does, it adds a little bit of blur, it adds some, you know, darkness on the corners and stuff like that. It's a really good plugin, but I would suggest, if you really want to get to know this plugin, to look up a YouTube guide on how to use it. Again, it's Magic Bullet Looks. So again, I'm 100% positive that there are guides on YouTube that you can use to check that out and, you know, better familiarize with yourself with that plugin. So let's go on to the actual Mojo, if I can actually get After Effects load. There we go. So Mojo. Now that adds sort of a kind of dark sort of kind of blue tint to it. Mojo is a really good plugin. It adds again a sort of dark tint to your scene, and it's more for like movie-ish feel to it. Again, I wouldn't use Mojo in like certain scenes, like actual PvP, because it is a very powerful plugin. But again, for scenes like camera movement and stuff like that, I would suggest taking that plugin and, you know, using it. But again, if I were to unselect Mojo, it would just be pretty basic. And then we got the brightness and contrast. And if I unselect, see how it brings out the colors and stuff like that. So Mojo has a lot of controls that you can use. I believe this is the default because it just looked really good with the default, but you can also play around the controls, you know, bring the Mojo actually up a little bit, you know, get the tint down. If you weren't using looks, you could drag the balance a little bit down to right there. See, that looks okay. But then if I were to add this, then that would kind of be uncalled for. So we're gonna spam Alt-Z a little bit. get it back to the way it was, and then add looks, because we already have the darkness right there. So that's color correction, guys. Again, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I just want to show you guys how much of a difference it makes, and just to play around with color correction and, you know, go that extra mile, because it's something that I'd really suggest picking up. It's a good tool to have. It's a good habit to get into to really make your scenes pop out. So let's move on to the actual camera movements. Now, there's a few things that I want to show you guys with the camera movements to kind of add, you know, more of a dramatic effect with your scenes. One of them is taking this scene into account, which is right here. If you guys can see the outside of the box, this is actually the scene. And what I did is I stretched the image out and I made it, see if you see right here, this is the actual scene. So I'm going to hit Alt-Z a couple times so I can undo that stuff. So what I did here was I added sort of a rotation to the camera to make it seem like you're flying with the camera. And again, it's something that you can do with just general position. If you hit P on the keyboard, you can just keyframe it by hitting the stopwatch and moving the scene as you see fit. And what I like to do, especially in smooth tracks, is I like to use easy ease with my keyframes. And what that does is that allows you to, it's not one fluid motion. If you select easy ease with your keyframes, what it does is it speeds up and then it slows down right before it ends, if that makes any sense, rather than one fluid motion, so it doesn't look as rough. What you do to actually activate easy ease is you go to your keyframes, you highlight them, you right click them, go to keyframe assistant, and you pop easy ease. So I know it's a little bit confusing to a lot of people, but again, what it does again is in the start it speeds up and then it slows down once it gets to a certain keyframe. Okay, so the last thing that we wanted to take a look at, and then in the next video we're going to be talking about machinima, by adding your characters into the scene, how you get the shadows and all that fun stuff. But right now we're just going to talk about color correction and camera movements. So one of the really cool things that I did with color correction in Xuen 3 was this dark portal scene. And I personally, this is probably one of the coolest things I've ever done with color correction, which was this right here. It just really made the colors pop out in this scene, and I just loved the way it looked. Again, this is another example with camera movement to where it's just sort of tilting and zooming in. But we're gonna take a look at what I did right here. It's a very subtle thing, but I think it added a little bit of a dramatic feel to it, and that is doing a camera shake. And what I did here was pretty much a camera shake that kind of looks like someone is holding the camera. Now, this is a very easy thing to do, and I'm going to teach you guys how to do this really quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this null and camera, and we're going to be adding that again. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to drag our actual footage back down to its actual regular resolution. So we're going to right click, go to transform, fit to comp. And right here we have, again, another amazing smooth track with that camera tool. So what we want to do is we want to add a camera shake to this. We're going to go to new, we're going to add a null object, and this adds a null object to our scene. As you see that tiny little red box. And then we're going to go to new, camera, and this default camera is fine. You don't have to worry about, you know, the settings. We just want a track with this camera. So what we're going to do with our camera is we're going to hit P on the keyboard. Now P is the shortcut for position. If not, you can always hit this little arrow over here and go to transform, and you got your position tools right here. But what we're going to do is we're just going to use the shortcut. It's good to get in the habit of that. Hit P on the keyboard, and then we have our position right here. And as you see this little stopwatch, what we're going to do is we're going to hover over the stopwatch. We're going to hit Alt and left click. Now what this does is this adds an expression to the camera. So what we're going to type in here is wiggle, and then bracket. We're going to do, I'll click again. Yeah. Sorry about that. We're going to type in wiggle, bracket, then we're going to make it wiggle about 3 times and parentheses, and go to 8. Now, I think this means it's pretty much like it wiggles 3 times every 8 seconds or something like that, or it's vice versa. It wiggles 8 times every 3 seconds. I think it's that. I kind of get those mixed up sometimes, but you can always change them if it's too much. So right now you don't see it, but our camera is actually wiggling. Now what we do to bind these 2 layers together is we're going to use this little tool right here, the squiggly line tool. Now we're going to take our null object and we're going to bind this to our camera. And if I move through the scene, if you look at that little red box in the middle, you can see it moving and shaking around in random locations, like a real camera would if someone was holding it. So again, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bind our actual WoW footage to the null object. So once again, we're going to take this little squiggly line and we're going to bind it to our null object. As you can see, it starts to wiggle around a little bit. Very realistic feel. Now, one of the things that we can do, and what we've noticed, is that there's these little black lines in the scene because it is wiggling outside of the resolution. So one thing that's important to fix that is to just hold shift. Make sure you're holding shift when you drag this footage, otherwise it's not going to stay in its resolution. If you hold shift, bam, pops into its regular resolution. So you just want to hold shift and just drag it out just enough to where it's not going to go and you're going to see black lines. And that's good right there. So there we have a really, really cool, realistic camera shake. And I've been using this quite a bit, and it's a really, really cool camera shake. Very easy to do, and you can play around with the wiggle settings. If you didn't want it to wiggle so much, you could just move it around, just hit position, hit Alt-Z, or, wow, what am I talking about? Alt, right click, left click, sorry. What am I talking about? Ignore me. Alt, left click. An expression. Wiggle, let's do 2 and 6. It's more subtle, to where you can sort of see it, but it's more subtle. And I like a bit more. I liked it where it was. So we're gonna do 3 and 8 again. Double click, alt left click again on the stopwatch. 3 and 8. Again, you don't need too much to add that effect, but it definitely adds a realistic camera shake. So the last thing that I want to do is I want to add a little bit of blur to this. Now, what the blur is going to do is it's going to make it to where it looks like the camera is going in and out of focus. And I really like that effect when you're using a camera shake in a scene. And all you have to do is, we're actually move these a little bit over really quick so I can show you. Actually, unselect these. Nope, wrong one. There we go. And there we go. Okay, so we're gonna unselect these. And where is that blur? Because I already added it. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do it again so you guys can see. So you can see right here, in the beginning of the scene, it's shaking, and right about here, it blurs out. And then it blurs to around like 4.3, and then it unblurs while it's shaking. So it looks like the camera's going in and out of focus. And I believe this didn't even last a second, this effect. This lasted, yeah, this was under a second. So 32 seconds, 33 seconds. This is about a little bit under half a second of an effect. So it's again very, very subtle effects, but you will notice it if you look for it. But if not, it just kind of adds that sort of illusion in the brain like, holy crap, that looks really cool. I don't know what you did, but it looks really cool. So I really like doing that. All you have to do is, you know, go into your effects preset. This is another built-in thing with After Effects. No third-party plugins. We're going to go into Gaussian blur, and we're just going to drag that in. And I'll unselect that effects. And we're going to go and do this again. So we have the Gaussian blur 2. We're going to go right here. We're going to take this really quick, and we're going to just zoom this in really quick so we can have a little bit more freedom adding these keyframes. So it starts. I'm going to just copy wherever I had my keyframes over here. We're going to go and select the stopwatch. I'm going to go over a little bit. drag this up to like 4. Drag this down. And then keep doing this like 2 or 3 times over the course of your scene. Add a keyframe. Come on, you. Don't freeze on me now. And drag that down. And over and over, and then you will get sort of a cool camera shake and blur feel to it. So again, that's pretty much been color correction and a little bit of camera tools, as well as some ideas for some camera shaking and stuff like that. Hope you guys enjoyed. In the next guide, we're going to be talking about how I added my character to certain scenes and how to make it feel like he's actually there. So you can see there's some shadows there. There's some decent color correction there, some outline shadows, and some other cool stuff. So we're going to talk about in the next video how I actually added characters into the scenes, and we're going to talk about linking animations as well. I didn't do that in Xuen 3, but I know that's very important to machinima artists, is being able to link animations together, which is very, very hard to do sometimes. But we'll talk about that in the next video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. I know this has been a long tutorial just talking about color correction and stuff like that. Again, I'd really appreciate it if you guys didn't copy this, learned from this and applied these techniques to your own projects and discovered your own style of editing. But other than that, hope you guys enjoyed. Look forward to seeing you guys in the next video, and have a great day.